This week's special guest, a Canadian broadcasting icon, Ron MacLean, host of Hockey Night in Canada, Coach's Corner, Rogers Hometown Hockey, multiple awards, Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show, coming up. How you doing? We are very pleased to have today's guest on the show. Let me tell you about him. All right, he was born in Zweibrücken, Germany, grew up in Sylvan Lake, Alberta, former TV host of the Calgary Flames, host of Hockey Night in Canada since 1986, co-host of Rogers Hometown Hockey, host of the Olympics for CBC and Sportsnet, winner of 8 Gemini Awards, inducted into multiple Halls of Fame. He is a member of Canada's Walk of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome Ron MacLean to the program. Ron, it's great to see you, my friend.
Oh, Joe, it's so great to see you too. We'll get into our mutual roots and the way we started in this business. And yeah, always like you, I'm sure I look at you on TV with such pride and such joy, and I'm sure it's mutual. Yeah, nice to be here.
For sure, Ron. And just before we got on the air here, we had a little conversation. It turns you're in quarantine right now. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I'm in the witness protection program. You've got a scoop. So I tested positive Monday morning, the day of our Rogers Hometown Hockey broadcast, which is a weekly show that we do in communities all across Canada. I felt kind of funny on the Saturday evening. I noticed a sniffle going to bed, but we had our house just filled with Easter lilies and flowers. So I thought, that's all it is. Tested negative Saturday, tested negative Sunday, but by Monday morning, it had got me. It's for me, knock on wood, it's been just a sinus situation. Feel good, no aches, pains, fatigue, no sore throat or headache. But the pain is that you fear you've put others at risk. That's the greatest concern with this. It can be a minor irritation, but not for everyone. So I pray that anyone that was kind of in the vicinity of me for the last 5 days is safe. And other than that, I'm cocooned in a little hotel room in Campbell River where they're super kind, and kind of a break is always a good thing.
Right, but so what happens to work now?
I won't do Saturday night's Hockey Night in Canada. David Amber will helm that, so that's easy. We've been kind of dodging around COVID for 2 years and taking turns filling in for one another. The Monday show is the snag. We have North Vancouver, which is the home of Paul Kariya and Joe Sakic, Brett Hull. So many great players played for the North Shore Winter Clubs, an iconic program there. And really pray that I will be technically, I think, cleared to work Monday, but our human resources, as we do the show here, are still trying to determine the safety and health and safety aspect of it. So if I can do that, great. Otherwise, I'll be well rested for the start of the Stanley Cup.
Well, we hope to see you on the air for that last Rogers Hometown Hockey. So tell me, how does Ron MacLean come to be born in Zweibrücken, Germany?
Well, it's a little complicated. Mom and Dad were military, Joe, both in the Air Force. And when they married, Mom had to get out. That was the rules in those days. You couldn't be married, if you can believe it, in the armed forces. So she stepped away, and Dad continued his career and was stationed in Metz, France. I was a breech baby, so I was born with it was about a 48-hour labor from Mom. And because of the breech situation, they thought the better hospital was over the border in Zweibrücken, Germany. And that's where I ended up being born, April 12, 1960, which, by way of trivia, is the day Rocket Richard, the great Maurice Richard, scored his last ever goal in the NHL. It was Game 4 of a playoff series against Toronto. So I always kind of love the link to the greatest goal scorer of the time, and my arrival being something to remember and to maybe think it was a path to hockey for me. Anyway, born in Germany, but we lived in France for a year and a half and then came back to Canada for about 10 years of military living, and then Dad retired to Red Deer, Alberta.
Yeah, and why? Actually, you're born right between my wife and my son. He's born the 9th, and my son's on April 14th. So that's a good time to be born. April's a big month around our place. You grew up in Red Deer. Your dad ended up. Why did he settle on Sylvan Lake in the Red Deer area?
Well, technically we lived in Eastview, Red Deer. I spent all of my childhood, vacation days, all my growing up was basically in Sylvan Lake, which was our 10 minutes out of Red Deer, our cottage country. So after he got out of the Air Force, he was looking for work in the RCMP K Division, it was called. They had two detachments of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Red Deer, and one of them, the rural version, hired Dad to be a communications director. He would actually work with the cars. It was a dispatcher effectively, but he also would do the license plates checks. He would answer the phones, especially on weekends when a lot of tough things were going on. Dad was, I remember one time, Joe, there was a horrible car accident in Killam, Alberta, and my father was working late on the night shift, and there was a first responder, was an RCMP officer solo, and it was just that individual and my father dealing with 6 fatalities and a number of airlifts. And I always remember running into that RCMP officer years later at the Danes Rodeo Ranch, and he explained how cool my dad was under fire and how helpful he was navigating that night. And I tried to picture my father being that way because my father was a very soft-spoken, easygoing guy, and maybe that was why he had such command of a crazy, tragic night. But yeah, so that was his job, was to work for the RCMP as a dispatcher for 15 years. For me, that was basically 1972 to 1987. And it was a great Central Alberta. I don't have to tell you, Joe, you worked there at CKGY. It was just, it was everything. You had a easy proximity to both Edmonton and Calgary, the CFL, the NHL, and a really beautiful parkland area within this oasis of the prairies. So nice place to grow up.
Beautiful area, no doubt about it. Now, you were on your way to the University of Alberta, the way I understand it, and your career took a sudden detour. Tell me what happened.
Grade 10, I had 3 pals, Donald McDonald, Sean Sutherland, and Bernie Roth. And they worked at the local radio station, our radio station, CKRD, which was always second in the ratings to Joe's CKGY. But we would go in, those 3 would go in and push buttons. They were called operators, and they would be paid $3 an hour for a 9-hour shift on the weekends. And effectively, their job was at the top of the clock. This was a CBC repeater FM station, and it would say, let's pause for station identification. And young Don or Sean or Bernie in Red Deer, Alberta would have to flip a lever and then press a button that played an 8-track cartridge that said, this is CKRD 99.9 megahertz in Red Deer, Alberta. And then they would flip the lever to rejoin the CBC network. And for that, they got $3 an hour for 9 hours. One day, one of them was ill and said, well, phone Ron MacLean, a buddy of mine. He'll be able to figure that out. And I know he'll enjoy the $27. And that's how it kind of started in grade 10. I went in and worked every weekend, Sundays from 3 to midnight. And I kind of got the bug. As you know, once you get around it, it's just seeing the joy of that business and how it makes people's day. I would liken it to bedside manner for a good doctor, nurse, or technician. Yeah, I was kind of hooked and just vicariously dreamt a little bit about broadcasting all through grade 11 and 12, and eventually started to do some part-time on-air work. But still, all the while, had aims to, at the end of grade 12 in Red Deer, go up to U of A and pursue education. I wanted to be a teacher because as an only child, you know, my mom and dad worked night shifts a lot. He was a shift worker with the military, and mom had a part-time gig, and you relied on someone other than siblings. And in my case, it was teachers to kind of influence. And so I thought, what a great career it would be to be a teacher. But the broadcasting got a hold of me and never let me go.
Well, you know, we touched on this earlier, and you know, it was in March of 1982. Young kid, Clarence Tilley, I was grade 5 back then, of course, if you recall. Got hired over there to do some radio stuff on RD and CKGY, and doing newscasts during the day, and then sportscasts at night, because that's where my love was. I mean, I used to rip and read the news, and just, you know, whatever was on the wire, that's what I read. But the whole time I was spent, you know, writing up my sportscasts. I just want to ask you, okay, you probably have some recollection of what I was like back then. What are your thoughts? What sort of sticks out for you as you think back to where both of us were, but where I was in particular? Because I just have an interest to know about that.
Well, Joe, you know, the one thing I recall is your boxing. You know, that was the first thing. I always felt there's nothing like listening to someone who knows what they're talking about speak. When I would hear George Foreman analyze boxing, it was pennies from heaven. There's a lot of people have a voice, but for me, the people who have been in the ring or people who have been in the arena, you know, in my case, I grew up a child of hockey, not great, but certainly played it religiously and all sports competitively. And I felt that was a real advantage to a life. Although I avoided it, it's too long a story, but I was a disc jockey more than I was a sports reporter early on. But it found me because that was sort of your true preparation, and your true calling
Hmm.
was in something that you enjoy. And I remember you being so legit in your handling of sports because of where you'd been, what you had done, and that for me was always kind of an inside track. It's judgmental to say that if you haven't played, you can't, speak about it. But I do think it's a profound advantage. And back then we were just, young and humble. I find both of us were, cut from a kind of a kind cloth that was, I think, more the order of the day. I'm always amazed, and I'm proud of young broadcasters who come up look like they have the world by the tail. I don't think it was like that for us, right? I think we were very terrified about first speaking into a board. When you're on radio, there's no listener per se. They're there, but you're kind of having to manufacture this person you're having a connection with, companionship with. And you did a great job of representing sport, and you had that same wry smile of on your show intro. So that's what I remember. You had the uppercut going for you right from the get go.
Ron, I remember being on, like, we did some work on the air together on radio, and I just remember thinking that I was in awe at how smooth you were. I mean, this guy is so good. I remember thinking I'd being nervous that he's gonna throw something at me, because Ron does that, right? He just stuff comes out of out of wherever, and he throws stuff at me, and he's gonna throw something. I won't be prepared. I used to get so nervous about that, doing the ad lib stuff, because Ron's pretty good at. I mean, you're the king of ad lib, no doubt about it. Uh, but you were such a you were a great influence, and a great pro. And I remember you doing the while, and then you got into sports. It was I used to do the sportscasts on TV. How did you end up? I know you started doing sports more after I left and moved to Lethbridge, but um, I know that you end up in Calgary, and you were doing the Flames games. How did that particular job change come about?
Well, two things happened. One, at CKRD, we went from a half-hour news to a one-hour newscast on television, and at that point, I had been doing work with the Red Deer Rustler junior broadcasts, and they just said, "Ron, we'd love you to do sports." And I'd always kind of avoided it, Joe, because I thought it would be I'd become a social illiterate. My wife Carrie, her neighbor, was the editor of the Red Deer Advocate, the local paper, Don Drummond, and I used to love listening to Don, but I felt like he was pretty tunnel vision. I would say, like I can remember the '84 leadership convention was going on with the Conservatives at the Civic Center in Ottawa, and it was Mulrooney and Peter Pocklington and David Crombie was involved in that one. John Turner, not John Turner, but from Newfoundland, John Crosby. And I asked Don Drummond, "Who do you think is going to be the next leader?" And he says, "Well, Fogey was a great captain, but I'm sure he's got to be Gretzky. It won't be Messier." He was just that was him. It was always about sports, and I knew if I got into working in sports, I'd be the same, and I have become the same a little bit. But I went and said to CKRD management, "Okay, I'll do your 1 hour sportscast," and that was, I mean, John Shannon, who pulled me away. John is now well known on Sportsnet for his work, especially on the Oilers broadcasts, but for a long time was the executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada. And they were looking for broadcasters. TSN had begun their operation down in Toronto, the sports network, and they hired away Jim Van Horn, John Wells, Peter Watts. A lot of Albertans went to the Mecca there in TSN in Toronto.
Hmm.
And so I was one of many who was auditioning to replace the Jims and the Johns. And I got a call from Shannon, who saw me on that sportscast, that newscast, really. And that's how it kind of happened back in 1984. I went down and auditioned for the job with 9 other commentators. And honest to God, it was a terrifying event. And in fact, you speak about ad-libbing. The one question that was a stunner, John Shannon's conducting all these little tests that I have to do to see if I'm qualified to host Calgary Flames broadcasts. I had to do highlights, interview Ed Whalen, interview Jim Poplinski. But the one thing that tripped me up was they said, "Okay, Ron, we're going to give you a question, and you will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Exactly 2 minutes. We need you to be able to take account and form a thought." And the question was, tell us about yourself. And it was just such a daunting idea of, do I come across as cocky? Do I try to appear confident? Do I play humble pie? Like, my mind was racing in terms of how to
Hmm.
sort of present myself without tripping myself up and scuttling my career right there with too much ego. That was, a product of being an only child is you're always on the alert for being that spoiled brat. And I've lived my life sort of trying to balance confidence with humility, and we all do. But for me,
Yeah.
I felt it was a particular trauma as a child to know that because I kind of had unbridled affection from both mom and dad, didn't have to compete for affection or attention. I tended to be a little bit too sure that things were going to work out, and that is borderline reckless. And it kind of always, if I had a fear, you mentioned, geez, I hope this guy doesn't go willy nilly in crazy directions. Mine was that I would go willy nilly in crazy directions because I thought I could. And that's the thing that I think my only child upbringing brought me.
Well, you have mentioned before that you'd had suffered from anxiety from time to time,
Mm-hmm.
I think particularly earlier in your career. How did you overcome
Sure.
that? And what was that like for you?
Well, I just fought through it, Joe. The fear of losing my job was a big factor. It all began. I was doing an on location at the stereo stop on the North Hill of Red Deer. So what that is a 60-second live TV or radio commercial. The host back at the plant will throw to, here's Ron MacLean at the stereo stop. And I've got 60 seconds to list off, the brand new Panasonic stereo system in quadraphonic is available for $799, and you can make monthly installments of 10 and all this silliness for 60 seconds. And I started into my little on location broadcast, and within 10 seconds, my heart was coming through my chest and I was having a panic attack. And I just could not get it under control. And I can remember the store owner looking at me thinking, good God, what is going on with this kid? Because I was maybe 19, 20 years old. Yeah, and then I had 15 minutes I can remember, I'll never forget the disc jockey back at the station saying, Ron, are you there? Ron, can you hear us? And, I could, but I couldn't speak. I
Yeah,
was having a panic
yeah.
attack. Crazy experience. So now they go to some commercials, go back to playing music, and I've got about 14 minutes to summon the courage to go back on and do another hit.
Uh-huh.
And as I start that hit, again, the groundswell of fear, starts. And for anyone who's ever had a panic attack, it's just that racing heart. And I just I found a way to say something a little bit humorous, and that kind of bought me maybe 4 or 5 seconds to get myself out of myself. That's the trick, Joe, is for me at least, and I think for a lot of
Hmm.
us with anxiety, is to stop dwelling on how you're doing and start realizing what you're in the service of. But that took years. I would have moments where I was, I can remember doing the NHL awards in my second year. It would be 1995, and they have the big drum roll and fireworks, and now here's your host Ron, and again, I walked on stage and thought, oh, I'm in trouble. Here it comes. And that feeling of dread, which probably lasted 2 decades, I had to try and fight alone because back in the day, it would never occur to you
Hmm.
to seek counseling. That was it was a different time, and you thought you were the only person on earth suffering in such a
Hmm.
manner. But yeah, get out of yourself and know your triggers: lack of sleep, too much caffeine, whatever they may be. Some of it's, I'm sure, psychosomatic, but if you focus, I think, truly on the joy of bringing someone up, lifting someone's day, as opposed to how am I looking today? How's my hair? How's that clever little turn of phrase? Those expectations that you place on yourself will eliminate the lightness you need to just go and do your thing.
So, um, so Dave Hodge tosses the pen, and everybody looks at that as the moment when Ron moved in.
Mhm.
But there was a little more to it than that. Tell us exactly what transpired when Dave left.
So Dave had taken a job at CKNW Radio in Vancouver at the beginning of the 1986-87 season. It was a really nice contract, 6 figures back in the day was a lot of money, and he was kind of moving a little bit towards retirement from hockey. Dave used to tell Don Cherry, do I really want to be interviewing sweaty hockey players when I'm 60? And I think, it's Dave's story to tell, but he was certainly eager to do the editorial work that he would do at CKNW Vancouver. He wanted to work in Vancouver when the Canucks played home games. He would host hockey night from there. And So then they needed me to come in and do about 10 Saturday nights at Maple Leaf Gardens early in the year, which I did. And Don Cherry and I remember Harry Neal saying, try to create a chemistry with Don. You two seem to have something, and that will be really good for you going forward. And that did prove to be true. And then Dave, as you know, the night that he tossed the pencil he was objecting to the CBC's decision to cut away from an overtime, bonus coverage overtime, granted.
Yeah.
But they cut away from bonus
Right.
coverage of Philadelphia, Montreal at the Forum. And Dave just did a lovely dissertation about, finish what you start, was the core message, and flipped his pen in disdain. And,
Yep.
in those years with social media, he would have never been fired. There would have been such a groundswell of support for Dave to keep his job because he was speaking on behalf of the viewer, that he would have stayed in the chair. And I would have just continued on as more or less a second in command or a third in command to Dave Hodge. And eventually, if Dave did move on, maybe slide in. But it was a tough way to start, Joe. It's very similar to, with Don's leaving, the feeling that you were the opportunist, you were the one walking in to, replace the legend, was not an easy way. But thankfully, I was naive enough at that point, 26 years old, to kind of ignore the hue and cry. And there again, where I spoke of my recklessness as an only child, or my confidence born of consistent love from mom and dad, I still lived with that. Even with all the hue and cry around me that I was taking advantage of Dave Hodges' firing, that didn't really enter into my sort of psyche. I was just focused on being a good person and doing a good job, and got through that. And it kind of, that never leaves you. You spend your life kind of in the crosshairs of the judgment of others. And we spend so much time internalizing on the inside what the outside of others and the world is doing. You really, and I don't have to tell you, Joe, you've lived it. You need to be able to put up barriers and live within, not that you look in the mirror and say, I've got this zest and I don't care what people think, because you do. But you certainly need to have a thick skin.
No question about that. I want to touch on that in just a little bit, but you talked about the chemistry that Harry Neal said you had with Grapes, and I just want to run one of the a clip here from one of the earlier shows. This is just after the Oilers had won their fourth cup, I think.
I guess it's easy in celebration to point to that as the turning point, the direction that they received. But some of those players who were in trouble at the beginning of the year also came up big in the Stanley Cup playoffs when it counted most.
When Coffey left, they said they sat down. I'm sure Sather sat down and said, look, we got to change this all around. We got to play a little defense now. We got to have the guys coming back. And they changed the whole game around. Even Curry, all those guys were coming back. He had everybody coming back. That's why it's this almost the same defense. That's why they look good. They were getting a little help this time.
So tell us about what was going through your mind when you look back and see a clip like that, because that's quite early in your career.
Well, first of all, when Dave left that night that he threw the pen, we all went back to a hotel in Toronto, and that's where Harry Neal sat with me while Don Cherry had a beer with Dave Hodge, and I was part of the table. But Harry said, work on your relationship with Don. And then Don sort of, our understanding at the very beginning was Grapes is a guy that he reads how you respond to him, and if he thinks you don't like him, he'll sense it. And somehow I had conveyed my respect for Don in the initial get-together. So he liked me. He was going to help me. He was going to bury me and bully me and do the things that allowed him to be the one wolf with his tail in the air. And it was, extremely important to Don in terms of, now that you see, Joe, the world, the more I look back, I was naive or oblivious to just how polarized society can be. But Don knew who his listener was, and he was going to make sure he protected, the construction worker, the guy in the beer hall, whatever he thought he was. And it might be at my expense if I was getting too artsy-fartsy or whatever I might be. And that was a funny thing that I didn't understand back in the day. I just assumed we all coexist, and, wasn't quite dialed into how to, they call it in academia now, code switching, where you speak to your listener or viewer in a language they understand. Mark Twain always said that's the mark of an intelligent person, is the ability to communicate the idea. For all, the gift of the gab is all I have. I don't have a great education. For all that I have, I'm not really good at persuasion. Grapes, on the other hand, was a genius of persuasion. Very good at connecting. We were a hockey rink rat crowd, and he was like me and you, born to it. But really good at it. Extremely savvy to know when to take a position, that swam upstream and when to go downstream. Whereas I was kind of always a little bit lost in that regard. So it was a great, just a great start. He would come with a kind word if I needed it. He would be, as I said, the bully if he needed it. And I think he was, in a world where the cameras are zooming on, drones, and the special effects kind of dominate the industry. Grapes locked off a camera on a Tuesday. There was no fancy set. There was dim lighting, plush or posh lighting, he called it. And his chair had to be slightly higher. So there were a few little affectations born of what's good for TV and good for the imagery. But basically, it was one camera locked off on two people, so that when he's making his pronouncements, he's not addressing the camera. He's speaking to somebody, and it changed the dynamic of. It made him much more lovable, and he knew that. He was just really good at creating the cinema of the Coach's Corner, and we still are friends, of course, but it just got to a point where the world had changed, and when I needed him to apologize, just kind of get us through or finesse our way through a mistake we'd made, which we all know. You can't say people come here and take advantage of the land of milk and honey, and don't. You can't project that on everybody. And it was a mistake, and just needed an apology. But by now, Don was at the point where he just didn't feel the need, and yeah, for him. It's kind of going out like Bobby Orr went out in a blaze of glory. If glory is the word, it's not. To him, it might.
Well, I guess I think it seemed perhaps that he wanted to go out on his terms from
That's right.
casual observer, I suppose, and what you worked with him for a long time. From a viewer, it almost seemed like your job at times was to try to keep him in line. Was that ever even possible?
No, and the thing that as I think back now too. Again, just seeing the politics of our world as it was changing. I said polarization, but that dichotomy between, say, a CNN and a Fox News, right? It was almost like we were becoming me, the CNN reporter, and him, the Fox opinion session. That was happening whether I realized it or not. More and more, when we were sitting having our beer, Grapes would be saying, you left-wing pinkos, you're killing everything, and he was, and I thought he was kind of having fun with it, but I think it was actually building within him a real resentment towards the New World Order, if that's what it is. I think this whole social advancement, this whole effort to make our world more inclusive, it was really starting to put up a wall between us, whether I understood that or not. In hindsight, that's how I feel, Joe. It was starting to take shape, and I think Don was kind of looking for a way to, okay, this is, we've had our time. Let's call it a day this way. And anyway, it was unfortunate that it put, again, both of us, it put him on the sidelines from what he loves to do, and it put me in the crosshairs of having been portrayed as a turncoat or someone who threw Don under the bus, and that was it'll always be a challenge to sort of survive that. But you have to, again, and it's not that I love what I do, that I carry on, but I love the ethics of what happened. And I have a kind of an obligation not to just cower and run away from what that position was. And it was a company position, not mine per se. But I do swear by that position. And I grew up, again, child of the military, all over the world, learning what people in Yukon Territory think about life, learning what people in the Maritimes think about life, realizing the oneness of us all, and wanted no part of a divisive narrative. And so, I couldn't talk Don into apologizing, but I certainly wasn't going to run for cover when the going got tough either.
Right. You did apologize yourself, and that polarization, that thing's still happening, obviously, and continues. But no matter what side of the fence you are, when people talk about Ron MacLean threw Don Cherry under the bus, and I still hear that today, and I got some of that when I mentioned you were going to be on the show. It's like, I look at it like, I believe I'm a man of principle. and a man of conviction. And I believe if I have principles and convictions, and my principles and convictions are thus, I'm not going to compromise my principles and convictions to satisfy somebody else's idea. Like in my opinion, it was wrong to speak of immigrants the way he spoke of immigrants. It's wrong. To me, in my opinion, being racist is wrong. Being prejudiced towards immigrants, people sound and look differently than I do. That's wrong. People have different sexual orientation than I do. I think that's, and I don't think it's right for me to criticize them or ridicule them or make fun of them or any of that stuff. And a lot of people are racist. A lot of people are sexist without even knowledge of that. Is what I found, and maybe myself to a certain degree. I'm yeah, victim of that to a certain degree. I mean, sometimes in a certain situation, I feel myself feeling a little awkward, and it's like it's something I want to be aware of so I can change. And so, if I'm a man of principle and I believe that racism is wrong and I believe that sexism is wrong, and let's face it, Don has displayed both on numerous occasions. And so, if you stand up for your principles and you follow and follow that commitment and that conviction, why are you then criticized for that? Like, why do you think you're criticized for that?
I think that there's a disconnect between reality and perception. Always has been. I've always loathed the notion you are what you're perceived to be. No, you're not. You are who you are, and but we live our lives in large measure, looking for likes and dislikes on social media, as though we were what we are perceived to be. Advertising depends on it, but it just you're so right. I mean, you have to have convictions. You have to have what is right or wrong at some point. And this was an issue that was clear cut. And unfortunately, Joe, you can't convince someone against their will. That's the biggest challenge for you and me and anybody in a broadcasting situation is how do you code switch to 5 million sensibilities? If that's what, if you have a viewership on a Maple Leaf broadcast that's 5 million deep, how do I know that I'm going to not step into it by saying something that I think is, dressing room humor? But, the new world is if the joke's funny, that other person has the right to tell you, not you go out and just willy-nilly put it out there. So that's a huge learning curve for us. Both of us come from, Central Alberta is, if I ever use that phrase, white male privilege, well, it instantly offends so many. But it's a necessary conversation. It's, the way we got to where we are with our Indigenous community, with the Me Too movement, with Black Lives Matter, these were all education opportunities born of a history we didn't have to care about, didn't know about, didn't understand. So this all came at us in a hurry. And again, there's the good side of a social media will be, the quick calling to account when I say something wrong. Now, sometimes it seems ridiculously out of control and it's a twist on something or an intention, but still, it's a bit of an ombudsman, that whole social media idea that keeps me from being Farouk in my ivory tower and spitting pronouncements that may be completely off the mark. It's a tough. It's a good opportunity, and doing stuff like this, having these conversations, is the way we continue to get at that. But I do find right now it's the biggest challenge for all of us.
Well, it's like racism is not okay. Sexism is not okay. And bullying is not okay. And I'm noticing that, like, especially when it comes to, like, not especially, but including cyberbullying. I mean, it's no different for me to go into a playground and start picking on the smallest kids and beating them up all the time. If my friends are watching me do that, they have an opportunity to join in, call me out on it, decide they don't want to be my friends anymore. I mean, that's the way I look at it. If somebody's going to post something on social media that it's just vile and disgusting and hateful, hate speech, or racist or sexist, the first thing I'll probably do is call them out on it. And if it continues, the next thing I'll do is disassociate myself with that, right? And so no matter what you believe. I mean, whether it doesn't matter what side you're on. I mean, whether you're right wing or left wing, or it doesn't matter. I mean, we all have to agree on that much, I think, you know, that if I'm sitting hiding behind my computer, like sometimes with a fictitious name, calling people vile, disgusting things, like, how is that okay? How did we get to a point in our society that that's okay?
I think it's just that crazy need for validation has, and I don't know if it's a product of reality television and everybody gets to be a star, or where it comes from. To be honest, but it just seems we've lost a little bit of our kindness, of our willingness to learn. That's the biggest thing. Is the attachment to the status quo that seems to be the one wall between the breakthrough and all that history, is the protection of the status quo. And it's scary to anybody to see when you have a new diverse and inclusive hiring approach, and that suddenly means you're going to exclude someone and include someone because it's the right thing to do. That's an alarming new reality that we need to embrace, that we need to understand how important it is as a step going forward. And that isn't to take away from you or me, it's to add to you and me. It's to finally take the prism and make it right, because it was not a proper prism. It was a lens of one way of thinking, and one way of thinking only. So, but it's very difficult to when someone thinks, I can't understand how anybody thinks they're self-made, because we rely so much on others in this world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's usually the ones who are prone to sort of not joining this proper fight for social advancement, are the ones who feel they're self-made, and somehow all that hard work is being taken for granted or abused by these new initiatives. So, Joe, you've probably had these conversations. It can shut down a happy dinner. It can wreck a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. It's COVID mandates. These things have become, via social media, they just fire down that rabbit hole and into a funnel of like-minded, positions that we're needing to fight through right now. And you would hope. Levity is so dangerous now. Levity would be one of the ways. I just look for that lightness, and Johnny Carson, one of our heroes, probably, certainly mine. I mean, he stayed clear of all that stuff, knowing that it would compromise him as a show business person. But I don't think we can do that now. I think you're right to say that you have to name it and identify it. And I'm talking racism, sexism, any of those isms. We have too much responsibility, sadly, right or wrong. Maybe we didn't sign up to be ethical canaries. I always use that idea of the ethical canary as the canary in the coal mine. They used to bring them down in the cage, and if the canary died, that meant there was methane gas in the shafts. Get the heck out. We need us to be those barometers, those ethical canaries, and it's a lot to ask. But as a group, we can do it. There are lots of advisors. I work on Rogers Hometown Hockey with Tara Sloan, so she's a gift to me in terms of LGBTQ2 plus awareness and understanding. She's obviously a gift to females working in a male-dominated arena. So that completes our point of view a little bit on, but we both are white, cisgendered. So we have all these things that we're trying to elevate, and happily so. Back to my youth in the military and experiencing variety of opinion and thought and background, and certainly wide world of sports where you and I would watch and see, oh, they like hurling, or oh, they like the Maori dance and rugby. That was so great, so just made us feel so alive to experience the differences in us, but the sameness. When I did Seoul Olympics field hockey, we had 20 nations, 12 in the men, 8 in the women, or vice versa. And I just remember there were strong, powerful teams from Pakistan and India and Australia and South Africa and the Netherlands and Russia and US and Canada. It was crazy. The whole globe was out, responding to the same whistle. And that was a great feeling. But they all had different styles of play, and they had different approaches. So that was the cauldron that we need to be a part of.
I look at it like we're all God's kids, and we all have a right to be here, and it's not up to me to decide who should be here, who shouldn't be here. You touched on Tara, and she was a guest on the show a while back. I mean, I love her. She's fearless. She's
Yeah.
great. She talked about what it was what it was like to work with a consummate professional like Ron MacLean. Vicky, can you roll that clip for us?
Memory. So it's just, you can't keep up with it. It just is, right? So it does feel like a lot of pressure sometimes, because a lot of what we do in hometown hockey, we're telling stories and sort of little nuggets of stuff from around the community. But it's kind of like cramming for an exam every week, right? Like you roll into Pembroke, Ontario, and you learn this and this and this tidbit, but it's not stuff I knew before. And so it's a lot harder for me to commit stuff to memory. I rely on notes a lot, but Ron can look at his notes and spout it out. So, his talent is remarkable, and it's not just his memory, obviously, his ability to just, even if it's a story that sometimes veers where you think is off course, it's not. He brings it back and he wraps it up in a little bow. Really rarely stumbles. So he's a remarkable, once in a lifetime talent in that way. But he's a really generous broadcaster. I mean, I think from the beginning, he always had more faith in me than I did. He's never proprietary about, oh, this is my story, I want to tell this story. I think he's always in the service of the story itself and not who's telling it. I always felt like it was, even if I didn't feel like it, I felt like he felt like it was our show.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. In fact, it was almost Tara's show. That was the first great thing, Joe, was to make sure that we had a strong female lead, because it didn't start out that way. It was going to be Ron and correspondents Jennifer Botterill, Christine Simpson, Tara Sloan, and a group of different people contributing to the show. But right away, Tara was keen to do it, and I just knew from her. You saw from your interview with Tara that it's way deeper than her love of hockey. It's her love of rock and roll, her love of the arts, her love of ethics. That would be such a golden voice, for so many of us to experience. So yeah, and the great thing is, when we used to do the show, like I would land on a Sunday. We would do it Sunday evening. I would either land Sunday morning or wee hours of Saturday night, and we would have basically an hour or so to put it together, and it was just so easy. She because I guess of her band experience, she could riff off of what sleep deprivation I was enduring, and kind of pick me up where I was lost, and vice versa. It's a good duo, and she's to be in the service of those you're with, either your guest in the case of an interview or your co-host in the case of a show. That's the gig. That was what I wanted to be a teacher about, or a doctor, but I didn't think I had the wherewithal to be that. So it's been a great 8 years for sure.
Hockey Night in Canada obviously underwent a transformation, had to, and we touched on the reasons why. But I really like what I see now. Like Jennifer Botterill is amazing. The 3-time Olympic gold medalist, not afraid to share her opinions. Gets into it with the X's sometimes pretty good. It's kind of fun to see. Then you got BX, of course. He's sharp. He's a perceptive dude. He's funny. I mean, you're witty, Ron, but he's funny. He's a funny dude.
Yeah. He reminds me of PJ Stock.
And Kelly brings
He's
it
got
together,
just a drop dead funny, and mischief, like always kind of needling at the right moment to, kind of bring that unexpected hook. I love what they've done. David Amber, obviously given an elevated role, is fantastic. Elliot Friedman is our insider with Jeff Merrick, so we've got that covered off. Jennifer is Hockey Canada. She's the goal scorer on the panel. Her achievements both at Harvard and with the National Women's Program are just off the charts. So she's got the offensive eye for the game. Kevin has that defensive eye for the game, and Kelly Rudy, who's been great for two things. He's a goalie, and the work he's done in the mental health arena. So we're very blessed to have that group. And it was this is never going to be a slight on Don, because Don was, he was his own beast of as I said, he created a show that was great and unique and will never be repeated. But we fell into, I think, with Bieksa particularly as the one who could stir a drink, we fell into a suitable, adequate, equal replacement, and it's just a joy to go to work with that group. And as you said, for Jennifer to go at Kevin, it's going to be back and forth on fighting, I think, for the rest of time, which is not unlike Grapes was there. So that's good. I feel like we've hit a good stride, and I'm grateful for it.
No, yeah, Kelly, how can you not like a good Edmonton boy, right? I like Kelly. He's good. He's got a good heart. He just and that comes off really well. And as you mentioned, Jeff and Elliot, they get all the scoops. Between the two of them, nothing gets by those two. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's and they do their podcast, so they're kind of handling that aspect of the business, which is a very new and important aspect of the business. We're doing a podcast, so I just think for Hockey Night in Canada, it's such a one of the things Ralph Mellanby did at the get-go was to make sure he had Bob Cole from St. John's, Newfoundland, and Danny Gallivan from Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and Jim Robson from Vancouver, BC, and Dick Irvin from Regina, Saskatchewan, and Montreal, Don Whitman from Winnipeg, Scott Oak from Winnipeg. He really made sure that there was that kind of representation. That was back before we realized there's more to representation than the older white guys from all over the country. Please don't get mad at me every time I say that. I know I'm offending, but I'm one of them. I'm Red Deer, but we now are we are a different form of representation that is so important. The women's game, Joe, it's off the charts with how great it is. And every rink I go into, I play beer league hockey twice a week. I'm surrounded by the girls. On the Wednesday night, the Hornets is our minor hockey girls program in Oakville, Ontario. Fantastic program. And when I play on the Tuesday night in the Adult Safe Hockey League, it's the women who run the rink over at Canlan on Ford Drive in Oakville. So it's right there. The 50% of the viewer, if not more, is female and dedicated and good at it. And so to have Jennifer and Cassie Campbell Pascal as voices, and we get from time to time Sarah Nurse and Natalie Spooner and so forth. Megan Mickelson's helping us now. It's been a big breakthrough.
It's building, and it's great. It really is. Okay, so you're a referee. You've refereed at a high level for a long period of time, on and off. You've refed at the All-Star game, I recall. Now, I have to ask you, as a referee, can you tell me why the whistles get put away come playoff time?
Yeah, I mean, at core, it's just wanting to let the players decide. What goes on inside the glass is a strange beast. And it's extremely hard to explain how, as much as we referees have the book and have the whistle, I honestly don't think a game at the speed of hockey, with a puck that gets into the air and sticks fly, just don't think we can catch everything. And I don't think we can be, without the help of the players, I don't think we can socially police the game the way everybody thinks it should be capable of being done. I've also been a part of other sports where I think that the whistle can do the deed, but when the players, when they start to lose respect for one another, I don't think any referee can bring it back under control. We're getting closer to that. The biggest thing was fighting. In the old days, believe it or not, a century ago, people died on the ice because of stick swinging incidents. And so fighting was deemed to be the lesser of the two evils. Now we realize with head injuries that fighting isn't really a great option either. So we have a whole culture of players who've come from either Europe or the NCAA model or just backgrounds where fighting was never part of the game. So it's kind of finding its way out, and the only fights now are generally when there's been a grave injustice on the ice. Then the fighter steps in, because supplementary discipline doesn't always do the best job of lowering the boom. But that's your whole objective, is to have the players decide for themselves that they feel safe. When Max Pacioretty got driven into the boards by Zdeno Chara a couple of years ago, it wasn't a matter of whether Chara meant to do it. What we do know is that he didn't not mean to do it. He didn't step away from that. And the only way to kind of put it in his head that I better not take this risk is supplementary discipline. But that's a hard judgment. So as a ref, I loved working with the players. I loved sort of reading off of them, what is safe, do you feel safe? That's the number one question. It's kind of where we're at in society. Do you feel you have your space and it's safe? That's how refereeing sort of evolved to the point where when it's a really high pressure situation, the players will generally police themselves. And if they don't, if safety becomes an issue, then you have to make the call. And for whatever reason, a year ago, cross-checking got off the charts. These things happen, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember when when cycling became the new, when the Sedines were doing their thing and they were spinning around the face-off circle in the corner. Everybody was whacking on the wrists, and we had to cut down on slashing. And headshots was a big thing for a time. Then it was cross-checking. But I don't think the game is in rough shape for the way it's officiated right now. It's a hard beast at the speed it's at. And I think on the whole, it's being done well.
Are you okay with the way the refs call the games in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that's, I love the scarcity or the sanctity of a goal. I always say, if baseball, if they called a penalty or two and you took away the center fielder and the left fielder and a guy blooped a single over into that field, it wouldn't seem the same as hitting the ball where, the fielder was there. So when you put a person in the box, it is a distinct advantage. The Leafs power play is clicking at 30%. You're going to have an impact. Now, you shouldn't, again, if it's a scoring chance or it's a safety issue, you have to make the call. And certain calls are very black and white, puck over the glass. But I think the less you get involved, the higher the compete level. And that's kind of the joy of the sport is, having said that, it's gotten so fast that I think there's danger in letting them freewheel too. So, but I think when you don't allow a little bit of interference for that poor defenseman, let's just say it's Cale Makar going back first game of the playoffs, and you've got Wayne Simmons on the forecheck, barreling down, and that's the end of Cale Makar for the rest of the playoffs because the guy wasn't allowed to set a little bit of a pick or protect him. Those are the road to hell paved with good intentions arguments that you have to have. You have to recognize that for every advance you make in one area of opening up the game, you could potentially put the player at risk. So, until you've been inside the glass on the ice, it may not seem as apparent, but I think it's extremely important. All sports have these little unwritten rules, and ours they're not easy because the cameras are everywhere and the speed of the game is such as it is. But yeah, I'm happy with it.
So Wayne Simmons taking out Cale Makar, you're obviously calling a Leafs Avalanche Cup final because that's
yeah, that's right.
That's what they'd have to play.
Oh boy, yeah, I love this Colorado team. I think they're ripe for a picking again. I just feel there's something about Colorado that reminds me of all the great teams as they build, and having another super season, and they might just be vulnerable round one because there's going to be a team or two that just scramble to get in that tight Western race. But they're my pick in the West for sure, Colorado. And then over on the Eastern side, good luck to anyone who. My dark horse is Rangers. I would not want to play the New York Rangers. And then after that, it looks like Florida has a lot going for it, but I'm not as sold on them as I am Tampa. And I do think Toronto, if Jack Campbell can do it. Couple of people I really respect think that Toronto's goaltending is better than people think it is, and they were worried about the defense, but the emergence of Mark Giordano just might be the cure for that ail.
Yeah, LaBouche can hit pretty good. And, it's not. I'm a Leafs fan, so I don't hide it. And I do like what I see from this team, and I think it seems to me that Jack Campbell seems to be rounding into form as the playoffs get a little bit closer. Best Leafs team I've ever seen. Best Leafs teams in terms of points. I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning and thinking this might be a team that's a little bit tired after being to the Cup final, after winning it 2 years in a row. Florida, to me, they've got a few questions. Got a very solid team, but I like the Rangers. They got good goaltending. They can scare you for sure.
Yeah, I think Rod Brindamore's got a magic going on there in Carolina too. That's the other team I wouldn't count out. Now, Freddie Anderson, I don't know what that's a little bit perturbing, right? That he gets an injury here at the late stage. But I think the East is all going to be about goaltending, and that's why Shesterkin and New York is they're deep. Their defense is really sneaky great. They've got so much firepower. Zibanejad and Panarin. I love the way Strome's playing. They're just a really good team. Well run outfit. Gerard Gallant knows what to do come playoff time to coach them. So I would not want to play the New York Rangers. I think that they, as I say, are the team that could most surprise in the East.
We'll see how that works out and maybe hold you to that and give you some credit if they happen to go a long way. You and Don were inducted, honored with a plaque on the Walk of Fame, and when you took the opportunity to pay tribute to your wife, and we have that clip. Vic, can you roll that?
The first Casey Kasem show ever was in July of '70. Was the only time that the Beatles and Elvis Presley were simultaneously in the top 10. I'll dedicate the song by the Beatles to you, Don. It's The Long and Winding Road that year, and that's for you and me. And the other one I'll dedicate as Elvis's to our wives, to Rose and Luba, and to beautiful Carrie here. And Elvis sang, "I will never know the reason why you love me like you do, but that's the wonder of you." And then Casey, as he always has done and did, signed off with, "Till next week, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars." And this lovely award entails both. So thank you.
That was a great moment. I know that you and Carrie had some tough moments together. I mean, there was a point there where she almost died, and you've had some emotional highs and lows, and it's. But I know that I can say the same thing. My wife, Penny Claire, and I'm sure you could say the same thing about Carrie. So important in our lives and helping us to be what we are and what we're able to do.
Well, Joe, first Mangesh Inamdar is the doctor. There were 2 doctors and 9 nurses. The night that Carrie had her pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot to the heart or lungs, I was playing beer league hockey at Canlan, and the firefighters from the nearby station came onto our bench, and we had 2 players who had had cardiac situations, so I thought it was that happening again. But they said, "No, Ron, we're looking for you. Your wife, Carrie, has just been taken to Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital. You have time to get there," which I really didn't. But they wanted me not to get in a car accident on the way over. And I got there, and Mangesh Inamdar, the doctor, was trying to do a diagnostic tree with me. He was going through where has she been, what has she done, trying to identify why it is that she was presenting, because she wasn't presenting in a conventional way of a blood clot. There was no swollen leg. There was no abdominal pain. He thought she was hemorrhaging. Of course, if he treated her as a hemorrhage, she would have bled out and died immediately. And he was figuring it out, and I was holding a bedpan for her throwing up violently, and I was holding a hose on a aluminum blanket that blew warm air into that aluminum blanket to keep her from, she was shivering. Her blood pressure was 30/15. Her O2 levels were unidentifiable, which was, she should have been dead. She was conscious, which is weird. But anyway, we came to the conclusion, Dr. Inamdar, that it was a blood clot, and then he called for a thrombolytic treatment, which is a series of drugs, warfarin, heparin, etc. And then that drip, which is done, saved her life. To be part of that teamwork that night and to experience the post-traumatic stress of Carrie's experience was one of the great moments in life. Just will always treasure doctors forevermore. And that's why during the pandemic, it was always hard to see anyone in the medical profession kind of come under fire, because I'm going to be indebted for life.
Yeah, that was that another thing that's not has not been fair and has not been right. But thank God. I mean, thank God we live where we do. And we have what we have. And and that's awesome that the kind of care that Carrie got, and the fact that you got to be there and to get through that, and it was pretty cool. Now, you never got a chance to go to the University of Alberta to be a teacher, like you're going to be a teacher, but as originally planned. But you did get an honorary degree. Tell us about that.
Well, and that was right at the heart of the whole grapes thing. So I had Rebel News was there, as they would, covering that story and kind of making crazy things happen. But it was a beautiful day at U of A. I just remember speaking to the students and saying, look, I'm in such trouble right now that me telling you what to do with your life is this ought to be good. But I spoke to them about, ways to assess their thinking. As I said, I never look in the mirror and think, Ron, you've got this all figured out. I'm constantly relying on everything from memory, which is history, to intuition, to knowledge, which is your education. To you've got all kinds of ways to inform a decision. And when you're at that age, there's an innocence, a maturity, because you're not sort of owing to the mortgage payment yet. You have to pay back your student loan, so you've got that one responsibility. But prior to having children and prior to having all these debts, you're kind of in a position to have your ethics. I think that's why young people protest more than older people, and it's just an exciting thing to be around, education, and to be in that room with all those profs and all those people responsible for the great University of Alberta. Again, it's kind of the feeling I had in the emergency room the night Dr. E named her Safe Carry. It's just like, gosh, I have such respect for this profession. I think, even politics, we've been discussing, everybody's in their trenches right now, but I still think it's the ultimate vocation. And I even think, having your opinion within those, political silos is one of the ultimate professions. For people to exist in the service of others. I know a good buddy of mine say, "Oh, they're just in it for the pension." So you can never please anybody, but I do think it's a great vocation. I think the education is it's just a way to find our footing. You get into a classroom, you get into a school with all these different viewpoints. It's a way to find your point of view. So it's important. I think sometimes the degree is a little bit meaningless in terms of the streets and what will happen when you get on with your life. But the experience of what you get through those years, that will hold you in such good stead. And it was very exciting and such a thrill I had promised, Joe, I had promised Lakehead University bestowed me with a doctorate, and I said I would never take another one. But when U of A called, what the hell was I going to do? That was my dream as a boy, was to go to U of A. But that's it. I think, I'm easily seduced, but I hope that's the end of me getting the opportunity to be feted, because that just belongs to someone who puts in the years.
Yeah. Well, that was your almost alma mater. And if you
That's
had,
right.
and if the sports gig hadn't panned out, who knows? Maybe that's where you would be. One of those profs. Ron, I just want to say that I really appreciate you joining us. Despite the fact you're dealing with COVID and taking the time out to be here, it's great to reconnect, and it's great thank you for sharing yourself with us for years and years, really. And it's been an absolute treat to have you on and to know you. And thank you.
Hey, Joe, that I couldn't say it better. You're always a dear smile and kind word whenever we connect, and you're so good at what you do. So thank you for this, and my best.
Thank you, Ron. Okay, we'll have more sports when we come back.
More Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show coming up after the break.
Bringing it drive deep to center field. Hicks on the run, out the truck, at the wall, and that is gone. Swinging a drive deep left field. Get up, ball, get out of here, and gone. Check that. He's had one 4-hit game, and Vladdy has done it again. Way back into the second deck.
Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com.
Hey, this is Tommy Graisley, aka Tommy Gunn. I love two things, music and sports. And when I want sports, I go to the Joe Tilley Show. He gives me everything I want. It's a great show. Check it out for yourself. Joe Tilley Sports, coming up.
Good night. When I'm working out, I like to wear my Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show t-shirt. It makes me feel handsome and strong. If you want a t-shirt, support the show, click on the link below. Now, back to my workout. 1,761, 1,762, 1,763, 1,764. Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Joe Tilley Sports is brought to you by COSA, Central Ontario Standardbred Association, providing a united voice for harness horse people racing at Ontario tracks. Check out your benefits today at COSAonline.com and check out COSA TV on Facebook and YouTube for all the latest harness news and live action updates. Live racing year-round. Go to HPIBet.com for all your wagering options. Become a member today and your first bet is free. That's HPIBet.com. Slow play. It's a slippery slope. First you go looking for that lost ball, and then everything goes sideways. There are a lot of golfers on the course. Make certain of your point of entry, look quickly, and move on. Remember, we're here for a good time, not a long time. Find anything, Bob? Not yet. Visit moregolf.ca today. You'll find everything a golfer could need, from balls, gloves, and clubs to custom fitting opportunities and training gear. Go to moregolf.ca and get $20 off your first purchase of $100 or more. Just enter the promo code JTSports.
All right, here it is, ladies and gentlemen, my COSA Swiss pick of the week. Last week, I went to Mohawk for Thursday night's 9th race. I took the 3-horse, A Disruptor. Now, she got boxed in 5th at the top of the stretch. She finally found some room along the rail in the deep stretch. Looked like she was going to pull it off, but Infinity Seals her with Doug McNair in the buggy for trainer Greg McNair. Was able to hold off, so I had to settle for second. The to be exact, I returned $24. This week, well, I'm going to Mohawk for Thursday night's third race, the Ontario Sire Spring Series for 3-year-old fillies. I'm going with the number 2 horse, Addictive Behavior, driven by Austin Sorry. You won't be sorry. I also like the 236 Exacta Box. For all the racing updates, visit COSA TV on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Go to hpibet.com for your wagering options. Time now for the Rycom Wrap, sports news that's close to home. Well, I hate to say it, but maybe Shaq had it right when he called a Philly sweep over the Raptors. The 76ers manhandled the Dinos in the first 2 games of the series. They also got all the calls. Joel Embiid pretty much got away with murder. And add injury to insult, the Raps lost Thad Young and rookie star Scotty Barnes due to injury. The Raps need Barnes, who is a finalist for the NBA's Rookie of the Year award. Hopefully, they can get this turned around at home. Well, closing in on the number 2 seed in the division and the home ice edge for this first round, the Leafs are in fine shape as they head toward the postseason. They were able to give Austin Matthews a couple of nights off. Sure, he's banged up. He's worked hard to get that club goal-scoring record, but what really counts is the playoffs. Nice to see Jack Campbell rounding into form at the right time. This team needs to win at least one series or all this wonderful regular season stuff like most wins by a Leafs team, most points, etc. won't mean a doggone thing, but they have been trending in a real good direction.
We're trying to get first, obviously. We got points. We got a lot of games here left to be played. So we got to make sure we just come ready to every game, and we want every points we can get, like every team. So we're just trying to climb up that leaderboard as much as we can and be ready for whatever comes.
Ho-hum. Just another awesome night for Vlad Guerrero against the hated New York Yankees right in the Bronx. The Jays' 23-year-old first baseman gets his hand chewed up by a spike. He had to leave for stitches, but he came back to complete a record-setting offensive performance. 3 homers for the second time in his career. The second youngest player in history to have multiple 3-home run games. And hey, who doesn't like beating the Bronx Bombers? Isn't this fun?
Bueno, bien, muy bien, ¿me entiendes? Yo creo que
it was great. I mean, the work that I put in every day. I mean, and just to try to help my teammates, my team to win every day. It just feels good. I'm very comfortable now. Since the first at bat, my first at bat, I mean, I had my plan. It's just good for a good pitch, take a good swing, just follow the plan. Just follow my plan all day. I didn't want to come out of the game. I already had in my mind that I wasn't going to come out of the game no matter what. I told Charlie, I'm not going out of the game. It never really hurt me. Even just when they put the tape on me, it was kind of tight, but it wasn't other than that. Just the tape a little bit tight, but it never hurt. They put 2 stitches on my finger, but it's not that big. I mean, obviously, today felt great, but I don't know about tomorrow.
Sounds like a hockey player. Huge win for Toronto FC. Alejandro Pozuelo popped the winner early in the second half as the Reds slipped by the league-leading Philadelphia Union 2-1. FC improves to 3-2-2. I saw members of the Union at the airport. They did not look happy. Well, that's one major goal out of the way for the Toronto Rock. The Rock have clinched second spot in the NLL East, and that comes with a home date in the playoffs. The weekend of May 6th, Dan Craig and Tom Schreiber each had 4 goals and 5 helpers to pace the Rock to a 15-7 romp over the third-place Halifax Thunderbirds at First Ontario Centre. The Rock improved to 12-5, while the Birds dropped to 9-7. Another great week for Canada's excellent tennis program, securing a berth in the finals of the Billie Jean Cup. Veteran Rebecca Marina with one of her bigger international wins over Daniela Wiesman. Leila Annie Fernandez, the star of the Canadian side, won a pair of matches. Gabriela Dabrowski and Carol Zhao won in doubles. Canada bounced Latvia 4-0 to secure their spot in the finals coming up in November. Cody Crowley is quickly climbing the welterweight ladder. The Pride of Peterborough improved to 21-0 with a convincing victory over Josecito Lopez. The Crippler dropped his veteran opponent in the 7th round on his way to a lopsided unanimous decision. A major title shot is just around the corner. Canada's Brooke Henderson is looking to defend her title at the LA Open. More golf, fabulous golf, as we show you the shot of the week.
God damn it.
4!
Oh, I didn't mean to hook it.
Yes, we're at 2 back. This is the Tin Cup hole where the movie was filmed. Ron just went for it, and I don't think he quite made it.
God damn it.
4!
Today's environmental tip: use less electricity. Power plants release harmful chemicals, including greenhouse gases. The process of extracting fossil fuels from the earth destroys natural habitats. Water usage to provide steam and cooling contributes to water shortages.
Rycom, passionate people who turn complicated business problems into simplified technology solutions for public and private sector real estate, properties, portfolios, and enterprise customers. Optimize and future-proof smart buildings from the ground up. The latest in fault locating, base building network design, managed services, cybersecurity, data analytics. Our fault detection will support all smart strategies, define projected outcomes for capital planning, and reduce environmental impact. Rycom, smart protection solutions. At Rycom, we're building a path to a smart and environmentally friendly future. And we want to thank all the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great folks. We highly recommend them all. A reminder, the show is available on iTunes, Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcast, and Pocket Cast, as well as the Spanglish Network and Zingo TV. Also, please like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. It's free. And all of our great past shows are there for you, for your viewing pleasure. Thanks once again to Ron MacLean for being on the program. It's an absolute honor. Thank you for watching us. Join us next week when we look at some golden moments in Canadian sports. We'll see you then.
Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show is brought to you by Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in the early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today. Let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did 905-686-5678. Do you want to buy or sell a home? Could 31 years of real estate experience help you? Why not speak to an amazing team that loves to overpromise and overdeliver? Aldo has a tremendous team of experts on staff. They are committed to making your next real estate transaction smooth and comfortable. Call 416-GET-ALDO or visit getaldo.com. MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business accounting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the need of their clients in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to do business and personal strategies to help people and organizations to succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, their team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca today to learn more.